Facing challenges and overcoming setbacks is part of doing business. Whether you have the expertise to survive them or not could mean the difference between success or failure. Welcome to We Are Women, featuring revealing conversations that provide invaluable insights into the success secrets of female masterminds. A must listen for every entrepreneurial woman. Now here's your host, Janeen Vosper.
Hi, it's Janeen Vosper here, and welcome to this episode of the We Are Women podcast. Today, I have Carmel Catanuto. Now, Carmel is a passionate counsellorist and art therapist. She started her journey in the travel industry, working for a major commercial airline, and she took a leap of faith transitioning into mental health as a support worker, and now is a solopreneur in her own business, running a very busy private practice in Oatley in Newtown in Sydney. Now, Carmel works with the heart and provides practical and creative strategy for heart-sick career women. Oh my goodness, no wonder you are busy, Carmel. Her clients come from the corporate world, small business owners that are stressed out health professionals who just want some change. She helps her clients move from restriction to feeling stuck and then into rediscovering freedom, spontaneity, choice, and most of all, creativity and aliveness. Carmel enjoys life, sharing time with family, as a close relationship with her sister and kids and conscious community. She enjoys ongoing inner self-development, music, dance, and all activities that allow for the expression of creativity. Welcome, Carmel. I love that. Some of the bios I have, quite the steps of careers and things like that. I love that. That's very much about the creativity and that spontaneity.
Oh, thank you, Janine. That was lovely. It was lovely to listen to that, actually, in the way that you expressed it.
It's quite, because I get to speak at a lot of events, and then you set bio that somebody reads out, and you sort of nod, it's me. It feels good when it's a good reminder of who we are and
it is
have achieved.
Yes, that's right.
So you said in that it's took that leap of faith from the travel industry. So tell me, we want to get to know Carmel and who you are and what you do and what you believe. And so tell me about Carmel.
Oh, thanks, Janine. That's lovely. I get a warm feeling in my heart when I hear that question. Tell me. Look, I was in the travel industry for quite some time, many years, over 20 years, and it started with a trip to Europe, and it was quite intuitive and creative in that, I want to work in the travel industry when I came back. So I grabbed the yellow pages back then, and I wrote all these letters to airlines, and I received responses back from them, and that's where my journey started. And the last position I had in the travel industry was working for Emirates, which was a major commercial, is a major commercial airline, and I was there for quite some time. And it was a startup in the year 2000, and still I was with that same core people in the sales team. And to me, it's about relationships. Relationships are key in all my working history, and I have left, jobs due to relationships. It's like, I don't like this, or I don't want to be a part of that, and so it's about relationships. And I made a phone call, which was a fated phone call, in that I saw a course on counselling. And I just joined up, and that's where I wanted to go, and that changed the course, and studied counselling.
And that's definitely very much relationships, but that's something that I've thrived on, is having great relationships with the people I've worked with my clients, just and it makes what you do a much better experience, doesn't it? When you can enjoy doing it with the people that you're working with.
Absolutely. And the moments, when I reflect back on the moments of, my working life, and especially, recently within Emirates, it's the people that I remember and the experiences that I had with the people. Emirates was incredible in, it was the launch into Sydney and then Australia and worldwide. So people at that time didn't know Emirates, and so the marketing and promotions was key to being known. So there were some pretty amazing events that I attended, and these were experiences that I'll never forget.
And that's it's wonderful having those memories. And I would assume that you know, in the course of the working at that executive type of level, you would have seen very much of the instance of the people that you help now.
Yes, yeah. Yeah, yes. Say more about that, Janine. Yeah, and yeah, say more about that question.
So, you're helping stressed out women
Mm, mm.
in executive roles or in their own business, and I'm assuming that, you know, you would have to decide to go into counselling is okay. I can see that there's people struggling around me, and I can help them. Is that part of what motivated you to do that?
Yes, absolutely. And, it impacts families too. So these women and men, are stressed out, and then it has an impact on the relationship with their loved ones and their families, and not a good impact. It's not supportive, and there's role modeling that happens, with children, and they see, their caregivers stressed. It doesn't create for a solid foundation in building healthy relationships. So yeah, it's very impactful and detrimental to health and mental health, physical health and mental health.
And is that something for you personally when you decided to, was that part of your journey for you personally as well? You know, going from, okay, there's more to this. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess I'm the type of person, and part of my character is to get deeper. What's going on here, and getting into, I guess my journey, Janine, is moving from being focused and in my head more into my body and feelings, and what is this heart space. It's not always soft and you know soft and mushy. It's the heart is a lot more expansive than what the mind can contain. So it was quite a journey to uh, move beyond my own defenses in the blocks of relating, and into a heart space, and what is authentic relating. There was a lot of inquiry and questioning.
And I think, people listening going, I don't really get what you mean
Mm.
about the heart space being more expanded than the mind. It's probably, most of us would be thinking that
Yeah.
where the mind controls the body.
Yeah, you're absolutely spot on there, Janine. In our thought patterns actually create a feeling in our bodies, whether we're aware of it or not. So, if there's a really conditioned thought and something that's quite negative, that can bring you down. And it's and I'm sure in the work that you do, Janine, that it can lead to a core belief about yourself. Something like I'm not good enough, and this repetition of the thought really kind of locks it into the body, and the body has its own emotional intelligence in that all the cells and the makeup of it believe it. And you'll even see a person in the way that they stand, in their languaging, their feelings as well. You know, it could be a low mood or a depressed state, or high anxiety. You know, there's an anticipation of something bad's going to happen to me. So it's about tuning into the thoughts and being aware of your thought process. That's a really good starting place in opening up a core belief. And this is a process. It's not something that's done overnight.
No, and I had a conversation with somebody yesterday. It was really interesting that you brought that up about that body language, and they've got somebody temping in their office, and she's really quite good at what she does, but they now need to fill the position full time, and she's applied, and this person is in senior management there, and has said to the people hiring, I hope you don't consider hiring her because of the bent over, the shuffling of the feet, the not wearing the corporate prescribed clothes. And it was just the whole demeanor, and it pulls the demeanor of everybody else down, and that energy drops in the office. It wasn't necessarily she didn't look good. That was not, it was the how it pulled the energy space for everybody else surrounding this person. And you know, what do they hire someone that's, you know, quite capable at the work, and then invest in her to probably respect and honor herself more is would be the way I'd describe it, when you can open yourself up and walk tall, as opposed to do they hire someone else, you know. And it was sad to hear that, and she was not being vicious in her statement. It was just something that they couldn't afford to have somebody with that lower energy. And it just made me think of it as you were talking about that, how that reflects that, maybe that sadness, or that less belief in self reflects that into how you are seen by the rest of the world.
Yes, and you know, having that reflection and that feedback could be valuable to that person. They may not see or know how she's being experienced. And this is where the sadness comes in, Janeen, in that if there is a particular belief that is happening, because we actually don't know what's going on inside that person, this is where the outside or the environment really reinforces that belief. You know, it can be like, oh, well, you know, I didn't get the job, so, you know, I'm really not that good, you know, which is really sad.
It is. And for someone like myself, and with what you're doing, when you're seeing people that, you know, I get people to be able to stand up and speak their message, and or to be able to have such a belief in their product that they're comfortable talking and telling people about it, because they love and respect what they do, to, you know, to switch it from all the negative thoughts that, which are usually, well, I find usually about their own ego. It's, you know, I don't want to feel uncomfortable. I don't want to be, if we're talking about sales, I don't want to be pushy. I don't want people to not like me, you know. So it comes back to that personal, and then that creates that continuing story about I'm not good enough. But that's very much on the I, and it's got a little bit off track, but it's that that taking somebody from, you know, maybe that person's example, I don't know her, but that energy of a person into something where people have such a belief in themselves that they, you know what, that's fine. I'm quite capable doing whatever, and I have belief in myself, and there you go.
Yes. And I'm imagining, Janine, that you hear a lot of that in some of the statements that you were talking about. It comes back to how that person sees themselves. And those statements are, you know, taking it a little bit deeper in, you know, you were speaking about a body presentation. So you're really challenging a belief about themselves and identifying well, this is how I see myself. And then how do I change this?
Well, that's right. And then finding ways to do that. And it's not just, not just for someone like me that goes, all right, throw yourself out there and get uncomfortable. It's working with people like yourself. I did a presentation the other night to online to about 300 accountants. I had these really lovely emails came through afterwards, and just shifting. And one was from a gentleman who said his business wasn't doing any good. I think he's gone to work for someone else now because he didn't believe that he had anything worthwhile to sell. But then after hearing me, he learned that he wasn't selling anything. He was helping people. And he said, it just was shifted. He said, you shifted everything about my beliefs about that. And I said, I can help people all the time. So it was really lovely to get that feedback. But that's what, that's what you're doing, is shifting people's beliefs or that about themselves, isn't it? As well. It's
absolutely. And gee, Janeen, just hearing that, I feel a warmth in my heart. That's profound for that person, and and the impact that you had on that person. There's when I hear that, there's a bit of spark. It's like, oh wow, this person is valued and has a contribution to give to, firstly to themselves and their families, and then society, and really helps to build esteem. And changing that is it
was really lovely to receive that and to receive that feedback. So not and because I presented online and it was a format where I didn't see any of the audience, so for an hour I'm just chatting into the camera. So to get some wonderful feedback like that was excellent. I had a few emails, which was very nice.
Yeah, lovely.
To receive. Yeah. But that's the thing, isn't it? It's about our core beliefs. So, strategies to change those core beliefs are important if they're not serving us.
Yes, and I think they need to be challenged. These beliefs can really run the show. They can really be upfront, and so it's up to you to take responsibility to challenge those core beliefs. And I think starting with a mindset, and what am I saying to myself internally when something happens to me? How hard am I on myself? Am I judging myself, or am I reflecting on what's happened? So criticizing yourself is harsh. That doesn't necessarily change things. And what I like to do, Janeen, is I like to have a play with words. So replacing the word why with what or how. So why tends to loop, and it keeps us going around, and it doesn't necessarily, it keeps us kind of stuck. And I think using the word what or how in a sentence as opposed to why, why did this happen to me? Or how can I learn from this experience? Or what is it that this is teaching me? It opens up a lot more inquiry, and it's a lot gentler to yourself. And you can, most of us are familiar with journaling, so we can start to write, and we can start to get it out of our headspace onto paper. And what I find is when you're about a page and a half into journaling, something creative happens, and you start to relax and get more into your body. I know for myself in my own journaling, by about a page and a half, it's like, whoa, oh wow, this is interesting. I didn't think of this. So another perception, something else happens. And I think creativity is a lot more powerful.
Yeah, okay. I work with people and suggest journaling. It's not one of my things to do, but that's an interesting concept. I haven't heard that before. But changing those words is such an important way. And even, with sales conversations, I get people to remove the why.
Okay, do you? Oh, great.
Until we get down into, the maybe the end of it. But if we're building rapport and we want to connect with people and build relationships, then how and what and where tend to be the softer questions. And I had someone say to me the other day, it's a business partner I work with. We run retreats. She does yoga and Chinese medicine part, and I do what I do. And she used the word might. So how might you do that differently?
Okay.
And I thought, wow, okay, because that really creates the opportunity to think, well, what might I have done? You know, I thought, what a great word. I loved that word. And it's rather than being really direct. Yeah. So but they definitely, again, that's in a sales conversation, is to use the words, because the how and the what offer open up to an open-ended thought process or an open-ended response from somebody.
Yes, it does. It's yes, that's just changing that, as you know through your experience, opens it up wider. Yeah, and it doesn't put a limit on it. And creativity is limitless. It's endless, and sitting with inquiry takes it further. Whereas with the why puts limits on it. And that's where we can get stuck. And, so moving into challenging beliefs, so then, you're getting into noticing your thoughts, getting it out onto paper, changing your languaging internally. So this is developing a healthy nurturer within yourself as opposed to a critic. And being curious about the origins of where this particular statement comes from, like I'm not good enough. Was it reinforced at home? Was it, caregivers? Was it teachers? And that's getting curious about that. And then, once you know what the statement is and you know where it's come from, then you can challenge that and rewrite the script. And getting into the body in the feeling sense. So I'm imagining, Janeen, in the people that you work with when they're learning to speak and be confident, that, from what I heard earlier with the statements that you made, so there's beliefs starting to bubble up. So here there's a little bit of discomfort in firstly getting up to speak, because that belief is kind of reinforcing that person. And then they've got to have a good experience. It's really supportive because it's vulnerable. You're in this period of change or transition, and there's vulnerability there. So having someone like you to as a support allows them to have a good experience. It's like, oh wow, and this adds as reinforcement and validation. And then that person can start changing that thought, and he's like, oh yeah, I actually did that. I got up and I spoke. Yes, I was nervous, but it felt good. I might do a little bit more of that. Yeah.
It is really powerful. I've been I've been part of a not-for-profit public speaking organisation for about 17 years. And
Wow.
I'm currently Australian president second time through, and state president, and all these other things I do in my spare time. And but I stay with it because of that factor, to be able to mentor people and see that acceptance of themselves. We had a person turn up to a meeting recently who was one of the most nervous I've ever come across. And she is going into an occupation where she needs to be able to speak. And at our meetings, we encourage people to do a bit of an impromptu, but if they can't do that, at least stand and introduce themselves. Because and she sort of said, no, I don't want to do that. I said, you're going to walk out of here tonight and say, oh, I can't believe I was so nervous I didn't get up, and you're going to berate yourself. Or you're going to get uncomfortable and you're going to stand and introduce yourself. What would you prefer to do? And she got up to spoke, and then we couldn't stop her speaking. She just really got into it, and she'd had some really traumatic things that happened in life where she hadn't spoken for years. So it was a great space for her to be able to share that. And But that's the thing, isn't it? With anything that we're doing, how do we want to feel if we haven't taken that step compared to how good we might feel if we've taken that little step and pushed ourselves, and then we can acknowledge exactly what you're saying. You know what? I did that.
Absolutely. And the impact that she would have had on others, because often, especially in groups, you touch others, Janine, and that's like a spark. Yeah, I can really relate to your story. That happened to me too,
Yes.
and this is the impact that, that particular woman would have had on others by her challenging herself to be vulnerable and to have that support. And yeah, so then it opens up more for her to question her experience. Yeah, it's not like, that did happen to her in the past. It's not about it's accepting that, but it's like you gave her that choice.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and she did. She had a few tears as she was speaking, but
Mm.
she thanked me
Mm.
afterwards. So it's wonderful to be able to see people do that, but it's challenging those core beliefs. So coming from a heart center, I know you talked about the creativity and the journaling and changing the words, but the strategy from a heart center, what does that look like?
Mm. I think the heart center is allowing yourself to feel feelings, and that feelings are okay. Often in the business world and corporate world and society in itself supports the mind. That woman that you're speaking about, it seems, I imagined her, and from what you're saying, is that she was really embodied and in her body. She had tears. So people can't help but be impacted and touched by that. And that's the heart space. And I think as a public speaker, incorporating your body and feelings as well as your mind is a lot more powerful. Someone that comes to mind is Brene Brown, who speaks about vulnerability and shame. And she uses humor. There's an authenticity to her, and it's real. And authenticity is about being real, acknowledging what's going on. So that woman that you're speaking of, she was real with herself, in how she felt. So I would say the heart space incorporates feelings and being in the body.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, because then everyone in the room felt,
Ah,
and I could see people holding their
yes,
chest, so they're holding
yes,
their heart.
yes, yeah. You can't help but move into that
Yeah,
space.
yeah,
And even if you look at the arts, you go to a beautiful gallery and see a painting, or you see a beautiful sunset, it just moves you into that heart space. Yeah, nature is such a great self-soother in that
yes,
way. Yeah,
yeah.
when we're stressed out, anxious, in our heads, trying to figure things out, going around in circles, it's anxiety provoking. Getting out into nature and doing that. But yeah, it's about embodying feelings and what's happening on the inside.
Yeah, yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Mm.
The and I know something that I read within your notes talking about
Mm.
that intimacy with that feelings and that process that then opens you up to be able to be intimate with people if you haven't got that boundary up or the barrier up.
Yeah, yes, yes, yes. So it would have been interesting to, when you're in your body, especially using that example, Janine, of that woman speaking, it would be interesting to be in the room and feel the intimacy, the level of intimacy that was in the room. Because when people are in their hearts, there's connection there, yeah, and there's respect. There's um, you know, I don't know. I guess everything aligns with values. There's time probably stood still. And this is like true connection. Yeah. So I guess, intimacy is about aligning with your thoughts and your body and sharing, from that authentic space, what's going on for you. That
So
creates intimacy.
yes, and so working with women in business and executive roles or owning their own business, it's not a space where they can usually demonstrate that. Because it shows a vulnerability, which then I worked with a client recently that was a 20-year police officer who had to resign because of PTSD, and you do not show any vulnerability at all, because you will, one, your male colleagues will jump all over that, and also so will the crims or anyone that you're trying to convince. But that's an extreme version of not showing vulnerability, but it then creates mental health issues as in this instance. But it's that whole, I'm running the business here and I've got to take on a male energy as opposed to being vulnerable. How do they do that and still have that? I suppose the word seat of power is what I'm thinking of, but have that. Yeah, it seems a juxtaposition of beliefs when you're in that space trying to create that, but then that causes disharmony, and this is also.
Yeah.
So how do they do that? Yeah.
Yeah, such a great question. I think there's a level of healthiness, Janine, in the environment that you're in as to the level of vulnerability that you would share. And that is a healthiness towards yourself. I think the starting place would be being intimate with yourself. So, understanding your thought patterns, what the style of communication you're saying to yourself, knowing what you're feeling, what your needs are, how to meet them, and how do I connect with another. And it's in an environment like that, there would be different levels of intimacy or connection, and it's changing a culture. And it could even be that having a healthy boundary around bullying or name calling, that starts the process of, first of all, having a boundary around that, then builds self-esteem, and then others are valued, and then they start to feel safe. And then, that could potentially lead to people opening up. So I think with processes in getting there, it's not about I'm going to make myself feel unsafe and be open in this environment if it's not unsafe. I think I would respect the having a healthy boundary, and that's probably different to a wall or a block.
Okay. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. It feels different even in the word than a barrier or a wall or a block. Yes, a boundary, which means, because a boundary is flexible, isn't it?
That's right. Yes. Yeah. I love to use the analogy of a waterfall. So if you're standing under a waterfall, you can put your hand through, and it goes to the outside, and then someone can put their hand through, but it's fluid. When we have a block, nothing can come through, so we can't even be touched in the heart. But yes, we can stop something coming in, but we also can't be touched also. So having that level of fluidity, and this takes practice in communicating what's happening too, in starting to cultivate a language like, I'm uncomfortable in this conversation, so I'm just going to go for a walk for a moment. That's actually a healthy boundary. Yeah.
Mm.
And when you start to do that, and you do that consistently, you actually educate others.
You do, and it challenges
Mm.
others.
Oh, absolutely.
That was something that I have found in, work environments, because
Mm.
I've always been, confident in my ability and confident
Mm.
in
Mm-hmm.
what I do. Then it for some people who were very challenged in their own belief, it became a target because that was their way of dealing with it, because it was easier to throw at someone else than to look
Mm.
in.
Yeah.
And that was, it was a few times it was quite challenging for me, because I was aware. And that's the thing, is when you're aware of why somebody's doing something, or you believe you're aware of why somebody's doing something, it's even more difficult to accept it, and show compassion still, but and
Mm.
still have your boundaries without taking it on as well.
Yes, and yeah, absolutely, absolutely. In what you're sharing, it's not. It doesn't mean that it's easy,
Mm,
because there is a level of discomfort. Especially, there could even be a belief around what boundaries are. For some people, it might be, oh, they won't love me anymore if I put in a boundary. So even challenging what the meaning is of a boundary for that person,
mm,
and knowing what that is and what that means. Because boundaries are taught, they're learnt. We're not born with boundaries. Actually, we're dependent. We're quite dependent young. So we
mm.
learn that through modelling and through the people around us.
Yeah, and I'm really discovering that now as a grandparent with live-in grandchildren,
Ah, yeah.
and that they've just been here now for a couple of months. And as a parent, you don't really notice it. You just sort of get on and do it every day. I think that's just plus I didn't have the the extra 20,
Mm,
30 years experience that I have had now.
yes.
And it's really interesting watching Miss Two, who hadn't had those experiences with boundaries, and she'd never learnt no, which
Mm.
was usually, that's one of the things they learn. So her way of demonstrating she didn't want something was swiping everything off the table,
Ah, okay.
or going into something quite dramatic and
Mm,
possibly violent as well. And
yes.
then she's been taught, though, if you don't want it, you say no. And now she shakes her head and says no. She had, and that's one of the simplest things that you would think, that's a boundary there for a 2-year-old, is to be able to go no, and how to respond to it appropriately.
Yes, yes. So it sounds like that she's demonstrating the boundary through her action.
Hmm.
And now the words are supporting her action.
And it doesn't have to be
Mm.
as as dramatic as what it was,
Mm.
and less accepted by society, probably, is another
Yes,
way to say that
yes,
as
yes.
well. It doesn't, but it was a behavior that had been learned,
Yes.
and now it's, yeah, it's really interesting. It's interesting having the opportunity to be part of both grandchildren's lives, the ones that are living here,
Mm.
so intimately, and seeing if you can assist with little changes like
Yes.
that, that this may help them
Yes.
as they
Yeah.
deal with the world.
That's right, as they navigate their way
Mm,
and their stage of development and what they're learning. And in their language, it has to be age appropriate
mm.
so they understand. Yes,
Yes. Yeah.
yes.
And see, that's part of that, that's a core belief, coming back to a belief that was hers, that if I don't
Mm.
want something, this is how I responded. Now
Mm.
that belief has changed. How in the people that you work with, the women that you work with, how do you unpack and look at beliefs in a different way?
Yes, yes. Um, it's definitely a process, Janine, and I just have a fascination and a curiosity with words and what people say, and looking at how they're saying it and what's happening to their body. And unpacking is I invite, it's an invitation to, I invite the person to, what's going on the inside? What are you thinking? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Or I'll ask, the type of therapy that I do is it's Gestalt therapy, and it's a particular modality. So it's very much in the present. So someone could be telling me a really big story and they're smiling. So I just bring attention and awareness to what's happening in the present moment. So it might be something like, wow, you're telling me this big story and I see that you're smiling. And they'll go, oh, they don't know. And then that moment develops. And so where else do you do that? Oh yeah, I do that here. And you were talking about relationships and people don't like me or respect me. Oh, I wonder if that has something to do with that. So in each moment, it's bringing awareness to the moment. And the therapeutic relationship is key to healing. So there isn't any separation. So together we co-create the space together. And I'll change it up. It's not just about sitting in the chair either. It's about, yesterday I was working with someone and I thought, it's quite mind focused. So I said, okay, let's do something different. So we stood up, and again, it was around relationship, and there was an invitation to do something different. And the feedback, just like you got with the accountant, it was like, oh, wow, this was a really good session. It was like, oh, this was awesome. And then I was curious about that. So what was it that was different, it's constantly bringing awareness, Janeen, because when you bring awareness to a behaviour, you have a choice to do something different.
That's a real key, isn't it? That word is awareness. And
yes.
And it's not until you start being aware that you have a choice, that you are driving the bus, and it's not you're not just a passenger.
Yes.
That when you know that you take on a lot more responsibility, because it's your choices. It's not just things happening to you, but it also provides a lot more opportunity to create the results that you want, because you're aware that you can do it. But there's, what I've discovered is there's so many people that aren't aware that they are the ones that are driving the bus of their lives and responsible for it.
Yes. I love that in what you say. It's very powerful. When there's awareness, you're taking responsibility for your behaviour and the impact, and you're developing a relationship with yourself, and then there's a choice to change something. And quite often we get stuck in, oh, I don't know how to change it, or how come this keeps happening to me, or and then being supported in that, there's an awareness of, oh, okay, so I do have the power to change things. It's not like events don't stop happening to you, but it's how you experience them changes. Yeah, and you're not going to stop feelings either. It's not about stopping feelings. I don't feel so good. I don't want to feel that anymore. I want it fixed. It's how you experience it changes, and to me that's a lot more powerful, because you're taking responsibility for your behavioural change.
Yes, there's a topic that I teach called spiral dynamics, and it's about value systems, and through the different memes as to and where we are within the spiral is what's important. But because we've gone through all of the levels of the spiral, we can move into a level that we've been in before, where we've learnt different behaviours. And it might be when we just the red is, it's all about me. It's the 2-year-old tantrums, or it's that space in time.
Yeah.
So we can do that. We as adults, we know how to to do that.
Mm.
And so we can do it without an awareness, or we can do it with an awareness and go, that's interesting, let's just get out of that space again. But to see it, or because it may be that you need to be in a very solid space where you set very stringent rules and boundaries or around you, or to keep you safe, so you can do that. But you can also go into that space and go, probably the easiest description is chuck a wobbly, and then and then go, well, okay, I'm over it now. Or if you aren't aware, you can stay in that space and be in that cranky mood for long periods of time, rather than just being in, out, I've got it done type of thing. So
and it's not about that's good or bad. So I would be curious about, if I'm chucking a wobbly and my 2-year-old is driving the bus, what I would do is like, well, hold on a minute here. My 2-year-old's driving the bus. Now, 2-year-olds don't drive buses. My adult self needs to step in here, and then I would gently take my 2-year-old by the hand and say, what's going on here? Because our emotions are normally the younger parts of ourselves that have been impacted. Yeah, like a hurtful word gets in and, starts activating that 2-year-old. So it's up to ourselves as the nurturer to self-care that emotional part of ourselves. But often, the nurturer is the critic. And you could turn on yourself and go, oh my gosh, you shouldn't have felt like that. This is really bad. You've embarrassed yourself. So you're really berating a part of yourself. So this is where tuning into the language and what you say to yourself is really important.
Yeah.
And ensuring that it's nurturing language. Yeah.
Yes, and that's an important factor, and that's part of that self-care, isn't it? So what sort of things can we do to have that self-care?
Yes. Yeah, so self-care, I think, knowing what it is. Self-care, firstly, is what we do when our boundaries have been encroached. So it's tapped into a value that, it's triggered overstepped a value of ourselves. So self-care is taking care of yourself. So you need to do an action to bring yourself into regulation. And, it could be as simple as, making yourself a cup of tea. Yeah, I'm activated here. I need to put my attention on myself and what's going on. Yeah. So, and self-care is receiving. It's not about an exchange of energy. So receiving, like, you may need a massage. So it's going one way and that energy is just going to you. You don't have to reciprocate to the other person. Yeah? Or someone could make you dinner and you don't have to reciprocate. Or, you're upset and you want someone to listen. You don't have to, listen to the other person. You could just say, I just need someone to listen in this moment. So it's just going one way. Yeah, so self-care is important in follow-through, in boundary setting. So if you say you're going to do something, it's good to follow through. So make sure you set something where it's reasonable.
And that would then lead to a healthy relationship, not just with yourself, but with other people around you.
Yeah, yes, it is. And the healthiness of that is that you show the other person that you value yourself. And then they might go, well, I might start valuing myself. You don't know what happens to the other person. Or they might, do the opposite. It's like, they just think of themselves, or because they're probably not valuing themselves. Yeah. For example, someone continually puts you down. You can put a boundary in that and say, look, I'm uncomfortable here. The language is impacting me. It needs to change, or I need to just go for a walk. And the walk is the self-care.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
But it's important though, Janine, to when you're putting in a boundary, is to be specific, and specifics around what the person's doing and not their character. Sometimes boundary setting gets a bit messy or mergy with, oh, you always do this, and that's not clear.
No,
Yeah.
no. Yes. Yes, you always is when you've been
Yeah.
married for 40 years, there's a lot of
Yeah.
always.
Yes. That's what happens, isn't it, in long-term relationships? They kind of get like
Just probably many times over 40 years. It might have to be once a year. And
oh, you always leave the top off the toothpaste.
No, that actually is always. That happens. It's so funny. I have my own toothpaste now.
There you go. That's a really good boundary. It's like, hey, I'm not gonna, the lid's gonna be off that toothpaste. I have my own toothpaste now.
Absolutely. That's so funny you brought that up. Oh gosh. It's some of the behaviours have changed since we've had the children in the house.
Yeah, okay.
We can't leave cupboard doors open anymore that we used to always leave cupboard doors open. Things that so it's becoming a learning curve for the 60-year-old as well. Which is a whole lot of fun. That's good.
Yeah.
I usually ask for three takeaway points when we're starting to wrap up. So if there's three things specifically that you want the listeners to really, take action on.
Yeah. I think that the 3 points would be in wanting to uncover a core belief, that's like a big question, is to start tuning into when you're having a conversation with someone, what are the words that you're choosing and how you're speaking and what's happening up here in your thoughts. Just start tuning into that.
Yep.
And if a particular statement starts to emerge, really take note of that. Yeah?
Yeah, that's good.
So tuning into the thoughts. The next one would be that self-care. So self-care is about receiving, and it's part of boundary setting in that when something has happened to you and you're either triggered or uncomfortable, self-care is a good thing to do. And you could even go away and write a list on what would be some of the self-care things that I like to do. Go for a walk, pat my cat, and they can be very simple. Then they don't have to be big things. What you're doing in self-care is changing your because you've been aroused, you're actually supporting yourself in coming back into an equilibrium, back into yourself. Yeah.
Where I live, it's about a 45-minute drive to the Gold Coast, depending on traffic and where I am going on the coast. And I love to play I Am Woman over and over and over and sing really loudly. That and Piano Man, they're my two favourites.
Oh, beautiful.
And it is. And I never would have termed it as self-care, but it is awesome, and it just raises my spirits and energy, and just to be able to sing loud. So so it's little things. It doesn't need to be the $100 massage. It can be
not at all
as simple as that.
So beautifully said, Janine. In when something's happened to you and you're feeling a certain way and you want to change your a particular vibration, you put on I Am Woman or Piano Man, and you know that it changes. You're even smiling as you talk about it, so it's already changing.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, and I guess the last the last takeaway, I guess, would be is vulnerability, and seeing vulnerability as a way of connection. And it's actually a position, not a position. It's powerful in vulnerability and moves you into the heart space. Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's great. No, that's wonderful. It's been a really great conversation, and I have thoroughly enjoyed it. And I say this at the end of every single interview and chat: the time goes so quickly.
It
There's
certainly
so
does.
much great content and just really things that are really important for us to be thinking about and considering and looking at the way we talk to ourselves and the way we treat ourselves. How can people get in touch with you to work with you, Carmel?
Well, I can give you a link to my website, and I have my contact information on my website. And yeah, people can call me or contact me through my website.
Which is?
It's www.carmelcatanuto-psychotherapy.com.au.
Okay, and Catanuto is spelled Catanuto. And
Yes,
the links will be on the show notes anyway, so we'll be able to
great.
put
Okay.
that in there. So it's been terrific. Thank you so much for sharing with us. And I know this is going to be a very enjoyable episode for the listeners.
Yeah, thank you so much, Janine. It was lovely to get to know you a little bit more and the amazing work that you do in sharing some of the examples here. It was fantastic. I really enjoyed it. Thank
Thank you.
you.
Yeah, and I mean, we're both very blessed to be able to do what we love, which
Yes,
is a very important space to be in.
it
Yeah.
is. It is.
So that's another episode of the We Are Women podcast. I am your host, Janeen Vosper. Remember, if you've got any questions or you're just a little bit unsure about where your business is going, how you can build confidence or anything, if I can't help, I can certainly provide you with the name of somebody that can assist. But if you go to my website, janeenvosper.com, there's an opportunity to have a strategy call. So we can just have a 20-minute conversation and hopefully I can point you in the right direction to be able to solve your problem. So please do that. Please leave a 5-star review for this particular episode. And I look forward to you joining me next time on the We Are Women podcast. Bye for now.
So, do you feel stuck in a rut in business? Visit speechperfect.com.au and download Janine's free ebook to avoid the 5 most common stumbling blocks women face in business. It's jam-packed full of tips to overcome the barriers that could be holding you back from the success that you dream your business will be. We would love you to leave a review of today's episode and share this podcast with other women in need of entrepreneurial inspiration. Subscribe to the next episode now and join the We Are Women community.